women take on an astronomical amount of things, whether it's mental load, they're taking on extra stuff at work, they're parenting, they're taking care of their kids, they're taking care of their partner, they're just doing so much that their baseline doesn't actually feel stressful. And so they can be sitting there and being like, I'm not stressed. But in reality, they're in this like state of like constant, like, I don't know what's going on.
My guest today is Rachel Sanders. She is the founder of Rootine. And in case you're already Googling that, it is spelled Rootine. It is a modern wellness brand offering supplements and at-home lab testing. Rachel also provides practical tips to help people better manage their stress, weight, sleep, and productivity. So in addition to articles on her website and her presence on social media, she also hosts a podcast called Smart Health with Rachel Sanders. And I'll, of course, link to that in the show notes. Rachel holds an MBA from Harvard Business School, and her work has been featured in Forbes and Entrepreneur. So if you are one of my clients, Rachel's journey will likely resonate with you because, well, you know who you are. My clients tend to be type A, highly motivated, career-driven, passionate people who are trying to do it all while also starting their families. And I love supporting these folks. For starters, I get it on a very personal level, but also, while this personality type is amazing in so many ways, I'm including myself here, have a lot to learn about balance. And there is nothing like being pregnant, postpartum, or a new parent to remind you of that. And this is kind of where I come in, with the perspective of someone who has been there, but also with my 24 years experience of working with women behind me. Okay, I'm feeling old now, but I'm going to suck it up and put that behind me and welcome our guest today. Rachel, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited.
Well, let's start off with you telling us a bit about yourself. I've read a little bit about you. I listened to some of your podcasts. I checked out your website. I feel like I got a good sense of things, but I still have lots of questions, and I really want our listeners to know about you and your journey and your company.
Yeah, of course. So I'm Rachel. I'm CEO and founder of a company called Rootine, where we create smarter health solutions for your most vibrant health, really with our core products right now being our functional drink mixes for sleep, stress, and focus. So they're supplements that you can put in any drink. I like to drink them with water, and they really help you feel a difference between whether it's sleeping better, feeling more relaxed, or focusing better. Within about 20 minutes, most people are seeing the effects. Beyond that, I'm also a wellness influencer. I built a community of 117,000 people. And really that stems from my own personal story, specifically around being a working mom, figuring out how to lose weight, balance my cortisol, and do all of the things, even with 2 little kids. And a little bit of background on how I got there is, in terms of my upbringing, holistic health was really something that was ingrained in me from a really young age. So I was thinking about what I was doing across my nutrition, my lifestyle, my movement really early on. And so when I went into my early career, I'm in my early 20s, I'm working in the health and health tech space and seeing all of this innovation going towards the healthcare side of things. So helping people that were already sick feel better. And it was really working. And that was really my light bulb moment where I said, why can't we bring a lot of this innovation across technology and data science and bring it more to the holistic health side of things, helping people get sick less? And if they are sick, how can we treat the whole body and think about the whole body versus just the individual component that is wrong for them today? And that all really brought me to launching Rootine, where we wanted to bring a more scientific, data-driven approach to health. And we've launched a number of products across supplements and at-home lab testing to really help people along their journey.
So what was that exposure when you were younger that kind of already had you in this mindset?
My mom and my dad, honestly, but mostly my mom, they went to naturopaths back when they were living in Boulder in the 70s. And so I grew up in Connecticut. They moved from Colorado to Connecticut, but they brought that kind of more holistic health lifestyle that was living in Boulder and in California very early on to that upbringing. So my mom was taking me to a naturopath. I was going into the local natural food store. I was taking homeopathic supplements when I got sick or to prevent illness. And then thinking about, all right, if I am sick, what are the foods that are going to most support me improving? It was just part of the normal everyday conversation.
Cool. Okay, so my next logical question is, you sound so invested in health. How did it turn out that you didn't become some sort of a health professional, even if it was on the more alternative side of things, and instead ended up in business school at Harvard? Like, how does that happen?
Yeah. It's a really good question. Funny enough, when I started my career, when I was leaving undergrad, I got this job working in investment banking, so working in finance specifically, but in the healthcare space. And it was something where I was like, I don't want to work in healthcare. I don't like blood. I'm terrified of blood. So I was never going down the like clinician side of things. But then as I look back on my, I don't know, more than 10 years, we're getting up there on the amount of time I've been in the career world, but it all makes sense. It makes a lot more sense because it was something that was always part of my life. We were talking before, but I was an athlete growing up and in high school. And I have just always loved wellness and fitness, and I'm trying all the things and the gadgets and all of that. And so I feel really lucky and grateful to be able to combine it today. And to your point on the why am I not more into it, I'm actually in the process of becoming certified or much more around hormone health, so that I can become a hormone health coach, cortisol coach as I go forward in the future.
Awesome. Who's your favorite person that you're learning from on that front?
I'm taking a course through IIN, the Institute of Integrative Nutrition, and so there's a lot of different folks on that course right now.
Cool. Do you know who Aviva Ram is?
I've heard of them, but not following.
Yeah, I'm putting that out there because Aviva Ram has an amazing podcast, actually. Aviva Ram is someone who became a midwife at a young age, and then she became an herbalist and did that for a lot of years. And then she went to Yale Medical School and became a physician. And I think you'd really dig her. I really do. So check her out. I'll make sure to put her in the show notes because I'm constantly reminding my clients and our listeners about her, because oftentimes I'm just like, I don't spend a lot of energy in that lane because I just go straight to the source, who in my opinion, as a midwife to another midwife, is Aviva Ram. So anyway, cool. Awesome. So I would love it if we could dive just a little bit deeper into your story and let you kind of, I don't know, weave in as best you can your personal story with how you ended up creating Routine, and just talk a little bit more about, your products and what it is that you're out there trying to do.
Yeah, happy to share more. So as I mentioned, the holistic health side and wanting to bring a much more science-backed, data-driven approach to supplementation and holistic health in general is really what drove me to launch Routine in the first place. And we started with our core product as a smart multivitamin, which is custom dosed to your biological data. So we're looking at data across genetics, blood levels, lifestyle, and hormones. It's over 100 health data points per individual, and custom dosing a product for you of vitamins, minerals, and specialty compounds. And that was our core product for a number of years. But what ended up happening is two things. So during this time, I became a mom, and then I became a mom of two. And I personally was experiencing a lot of issues. After my second baby, I was desperately trying to feel and look like myself again. And despite doing all the wellness things that I had done in my past, and even after my first baby, I was struggling with sleep issues, with extra mood and irritability. I was being way overstimulated. I was just getting overstimulated way faster than I ever was before. Had extra belly fat. I was struggling to lose my postpartum weight, and I was eating well. I was doing the steps. I was working out in the way that I thought I should be working out. And it turns out a lot of it was due to cortisol imbalance. And around the same time, we were expanding our at-home lab testing process, and cortisol was one of the tests that we wanted to integrate. And through that experience, I learned A, that my cortisol was crazy imbalanced, and B, that I wasn't alone, where women in their 30s, 40s, and 50s especially, so this millennial and Gen X generation, are more stressed, they're more overwhelmed, and more burnt out than ever before. And this is peak age for cortisol imbalance for these women. And that leads to a lot of these daily symptoms that I was experiencing. So that's stress, that's moodiness, irritability, that can even be like adult acne, gut issues, sleep problems, brain fog. And we were seeing the same thing in terms of the lifestyle assessments and understanding from our customers, that not only was I experiencing this, that we knew a lot of other women, but our customers were also experiencing this. And that's really the why behind this product line evolution and where we are today with our functional drink mixes. So we started with sleep, stress, and focus. They're all natural ingredients, adaptogen blends, clinician formulated, third-party tested, really to make a difference quickly for this woman who is busy, she's on the go, and she needs support. And that's how my story, the company story, and the kind of market story all came together, where we're really on this mission to help these women feel their happiest and healthiest selves.
Awesome. So you said something I found really interesting. I was working out the way I thought I should be working out. Tell us a little bit about what you thought and what you have learned and what you now believe about this, because this is just a big area of interest for me.
Yeah, so when I tested my cortisol, we figured out that it was too low in the morning and too high at night. And the way that we Routine created our test is we actually looked at 144,000 data points in scientific literature to understand what an optimal cortisol curve should look like. For anyone listening who doesn't know what cortisol is or what it should be, it is a stress hormone. It is a major hormone, and so it impacts a lot of different things in the body. If your cortisol is out of whack, your other hormones are likely out of whack too. That's a very simplistic way to say it, but that's what it is. And what it should do is you should have this rise, pretty rapid rise of cortisol in the morning, and then it should go down at night and should be at lowest right before you go to sleep, so that your body can then produce the melatonin it needs to fall asleep and stay asleep. The problem is that today's world and everything that we're doing between our lifestyle, our food, how we're working, where we're working, whether or not we're getting natural sunlight, all of these things, our news, our social media, are constantly disrupting us, creating these stressors, both physical and mental stressors in the body. So instead of living in this state where your cortisol goes up and then it goes down like it's supposed to, you're in this state of just like constantly high or elevated cortisol levels. And that's what was happening to me. And that was when I learned that, given my specific cortisol results, that me doing 5 days a week of high intensity cardio for 60 minutes a day was probably not the best way to approach weight loss, because cortisol and weight loss are very connected, and high intensity cardio can spike cortisol levels. Despite, maybe for me, I loved it. It's a mental release. It's a fun experience. Wasn't the right thing for me for my health goals. And so I transitioned from doing that probably 4 to 5 days a week to doing strength training 3 to 4 days a week, walking a lot more, especially outside to get that natural light. And then I'll do 1 or 2 days a week of high intense cardio, because it still is a great like stress reliever, mental break for me.
Yeah, I feel like we don't talk about this enough, that I don't think any of us mean to say that high intensity is bad. There are definitely people out there who maybe push for too much high intensity, but where the science is going for sure is showing that we need a lot less of it than we think we do. And that many people like myself who have, and it sounds like you, who have gone that path, have often done way more than our bodies are capable of recovering from. And that's where I feel like the state of the science is when it comes to how to talk about fitness in a more holistic way. It's like we all have a different tolerance for how much we can recover. And then that's how we have to figure out, how do I layer in what amount of high intensity with strength training, because that's stressful too on the body, even though every woman needs to do it. But we have to then figure out how we're going to work in those more like zone 2 type things and active recovery type things in order to balance that out, so that we don't end up too far on that stress curve right? And that sounds like a big piece of what you figured out. So, I mean, you did that so well, like in a nutshell, what the issues are around exercise and cortisol. And I think that that's really great. And I know a lot of our listeners are very aware of the word cortisol being thrown out into the ether. And almost everyone can feel like, well, that probably is them, right? That's just modern life. And maybe that is true. But can you help us kind of like narrow down the types of people or situations that people might be in? Be it, I don't know if I want to call, I'm struggling to not use the word diagnosis right now because I don't want to like pare this down to a diagnosis because it's a bigger conversation than that. So like, I'm kind of like, for some reason, the word label is what's coming to mind. Like, what are the labels of people that maybe should listen up and tune into this discussion around cortisol? Are you pregnant or a new parent looking to ensure a better postpartum experience? Or are you a birth worker looking to improve your postpartum care skills? Check out Thriving After Birth, an online self-paced course by me, midwife and educator Tanya Tringali. It's 10 and a half hours of video content featuring experts in lactation, mental health, pelvic floor health, pediatric sleep issues. You also get worksheets and a workbook, as well as options to have a one-on-one session with me. Sign up at motherwitmaternity.com/thriving, and let's improve postpartum care together.
We hope you're enjoying the Mother Wit podcast. If you are, please rate us and leave a review in iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you're listening to your podcast. Thanks so much. Now, back to the show.
I really think it's around symptoms because what I've seen, especially in women, is women take on an astronomical amount of things. Whether it's mental load, they're taking on extra stuff at work, they're parenting, they're taking care of their kids, they're taking care of their partner, they're just doing so much that their baseline doesn't actually feel stressful. And so they can be sitting there and being like, I'm not stressed. But in reality, they're in this like state of like constant, like, I don't know what's going on. Like their body is feeling it, even though their mind maybe doesn't realize it. And so for the people that are experiencing things like, hey, you're doing what you think you should be doing to lose weight, but you're not losing it. You have extra belly fat. You have really bad cycles. That's another thing that you can see where your hormones are overall off a little bit. You're having trouble sleeping. You're having racing thoughts at night. You're waking up at 2 a.m. You have gut issues. You have that like tired but wired feeling at night. That's something I was experiencing a lot where I was exhausted, but then I was wired at night and like wanted to like work until midnight. And that's not normal. Like you're not supposed to actually do that. Or maybe you're feeling like chronic fatigue, like you're sleeping 7 to 8 hours, but you're waking up and you're still exhausted. And especially for parents and moms, this is a big one where you find yourself snapping at your kids or your partner more than you want to. You're like extra irritable, or you get really overstimulated when you're like, I don't know that I should be that overstimulated. Those are all signs where your cortisol might be out of whack.
Yeah. I love everything you said. And of course, here I was trying really hard not to like get too diagnosy in this, but like I feel like there are words people are also hearing that are essentially diagnoses or moving down that pathway. And one of those is like adrenal fatigue. People who have heard or read about adrenal fatigue who feel like that resonates with them, or people who need to be listening to this bigger conversation about cortisol and figuring out where they fall. Even people with PCOS or who have been considered to possibly have PCOS, right? Because that's a really annoying diagnosis to have to make, and it gets overdiagnosed and underdiagnosed both. But people who have kind of like been walking a path where they're trying to figure out what is it that's going on with me, and these are words that have been circulating in the ether around you, this is a discussion for you. So I have a question now also. Your drink mixes, right? Because they are for stress, sleep, and focus. Would you say that they're all speaking to this cortisol issue, but based on the way it's individually manifesting for people? Or are you targeting other issues as well that we haven't quite touched on because we've just been focused on cortisol?
Yeah, so the stress blend is the most specifically targeted towards cortisol. it's got ashwagandha, rhodiola, it's got Siberian ginseng and astragalus, and it's formulated for that calm and relaxation. It's also to optimize your stress response and really support healthy cortisol levels with those adaptogens like ashwagandha and rhodiola specifically that have been really studied around stress resilience. So that's the like, I'm really stressed and I'm feeling those like anxious feelings. I'm much more of like the overthinking, anxiety-ridden type. That's the one I specifically love. I drink it as my wine alternative after I put my kids to bed. That's my drink of choice. And then our sleep product, of course, sleep is super important in this whole conversation. So we're talking a lot about cortisol. That's our wake hormone, but it's really around the overall like biological clock. So what is your body doing over the course of 24 hours? Are you sleeping? Are you awake? Cortisol imbalance impacts sleep, and sleep problems impact cortisol. So it's this really vicious cycle if you get into it. So sleep is really helpful for people where A, their cortisol levels show up in a sleep problem, or B, you're having trouble sleeping, which is impacting your cortisol levels overall. It also has 5 adaptogens in it, along with magnesium, which overall supports your healthy stress response, but also sleep. It's melatonin free, so it's great for daily use.
I was just going to ask.
And then focus. Yeah. And then focus is a little bit more concentrated towards if you're dealing with brain issues or cognition issues or mental clarity issues stemming from cortisol imbalance, and specifically for women getting more done and being able to actually get through your to-do list, not procrastinating is also very helpful in terms of managing your stress levels and your cortisol levels. It's got CDP choline in it. Choline is a nutrient that 90% of women are deficient in, and it's got some things like bacopa and some other great brain health nutrients in it, adaptogens in it. So it's supporting long-term brain health while it's also helping you overall with your symptoms and supporting healthy cortisol as well.
So curious, do you have people who have ADHD, women who have ADHD specifically, like using this product and finding that it makes any difference? Or is that kind of a little too off the path of what you typically do from a hormonal standpoint?
It's not feedback that I've gotten yet, but I'm sure that we're going to see it. We're actually doing a clinical study specifically on the change in brain waves once people take focus. So that'll be really interesting to see those results.
Yeah, I know that just came to mind. I was like, oh, this isn't as far. I mean, I don't know the science behind ADHD all that well, so I'm sort of speaking out of turn, but it's not like on paper a hormonal problem, right? So I'm like, oh, that's kind of an interesting thought. And then the other group of people that I was thinking about and wondering if you're hearing from them are the perimenopausal women.
Yeah. So this is, so we've formulated it. It's really women in their 30s through to 50s. And so perimenopause is hitting at some point during that time. And A, that's a hormonal thing. And B, these symptoms that we're seeing both from cortisol imbalance, but just overall are really something that they're struggling with. And so these products are very supportive of a lot of those problems. So it's helping with that cortisol balance, which helps with sleep and overall hormone balance in a time when hormones are going wacko. And then the sleep specifically is really great because it's melatonin free. So it's helping you fall asleep, stay asleep, and wake up with a much more refreshed feeling, and combating that brain fog and mental clarity that a lot of perimenopausal women complain about.
Cool. I'm digging it. All right. A little shift here. I'm curious why you called the company Rootine.
It's a double meaning. So you're creating a routine, a healthy routine, because that's what we want our products and our overall brand to be about, is helping support your daily life and your daily routines. But we're also helping you get to the root of what's going on and solving those root cause problems versus putting a Band-Aid on top.
I love it. It's a great name. I feel like I should have, I understood the routine spelled with a U part. I did not, for some reason, catch on to the ROOT, probably because somewhere deep inside, my like lactation brain was going, and I was hearing the word root more as a baby rooting.
Yeah.
So, okay, the second you started talking, I was like, duh, okay, got it. Okay, so given that your whole thing here, right, is about routine, and I've heard you talk, I know how much you invest energy in helping people solve a whole bunch of problems that have to do with staying organized and staying proficient and efficient. What are your biggest tips that you have, probably more from your own life experience than anything else at this point, between raising kids and running a business like this? What is it that you would share with new parents about keeping a routine?
Yeah, I can share all the things both on productivity and being efficient and getting my work done, but also on the cortisol balancing and staying healthy and all the things. But we can start with the productivity side. So I would say one thing that is actually critically important across both is making sure you're carving out time for yourself. And even if you're a new parent, what is that 30 minutes that you can have for yourself, and what can you do in those 30 minutes? It's really going to make you feel great. And there's 1,000 things that you could do. And other people are going to tell you the laundry list of things that they do in their own life, but figure out what's like one or two things that you want to try this week and take that 30 minutes that you have set aside for yourself and try it. Whether that's something I started doing more recently, but it's hydrating before my coffee. I hydrate with electrolytes before my coffee. It's a 5-minute habit. It helps with overall wellness. Also, when you wake up, your body is dehydrated, and dehydration is a physical stressor, so it helps with cortisol balance. It just helps with all the things, mental clarity, etc. So that's one thing across the board. In terms of productivity, my number one tip that I love is to not look at your phone right when you wake up. And honestly, don't look at your email until you've moved something forward that you want to move forward. I am a very type A person. It stresses me out when I can't get done what I need to get done, and a bunch of other people are asking me for things. And that's my kids, my partner, my team, all the emails coming at me. So I actually stopped looking at my emails. I will try not to look at my phone and just spend an hour moving a project forward, whether it's a strategy document, a pitch deck, something for your kids where it's like, oh, I have to book dentist appointments or doctor's appointments. The other day I had to book an appointment for my dog. Just like something that's like moving your life forward before you get bombarded with all of the other stuff is really helpful. And then the other kind of wellness and or cortisol tips, we talked about movement, so definitely pay attention to that. One thing I didn't realize before diving into the research is just how good nature is as a natural stress reliever. Makes sense, but being outside and getting natural light is really great. So find ways to get outside more during the day. It's free. Even if it's not super great weather, being outside is helpful. And then obviously nutrition is really important. So nutrition and supplementation, definitely consider adaptogens to support you where you need to be. Getting a multivitamin, make sure you're getting all the nutrients you need. But from a overall, like what you're eating perspective, those whole foods, prioritizing protein, and trying to stay away from processed foods and sugar foods that are going to spike your blood sugar, which creates problems, really just cortisol imbalance, but also just overall metabolic health, which can create all sorts of other problems in the body.
And do you have strong feelings on alcohol consumption? I have a memory of listening to something you were talking about on one of your podcast episodes about not drinking. You don't drink any alcohol whatsoever.
So I do drink occasionally. I have really strong feelings about my own alcohol consumption, not others' alcohol consumption. And that feeling started stemming from the fact that as I entered into my late 20s, I experienced like the worst, what they call anxiety. I don't know if there's an actual term for that. But basically I would have like a glass of wine and wake up the next day with like the worst anxiety I've ever had in my life. And it just continued to happen. And so I gradually reduced my alcohol consumption over time because I frankly hated that feeling.
Totally.
And then I started wearing wearables, and with the wearables, you can just see how much it impacts your sleep.
Yeah.
It impacts your HRV, which further changed that. And so my habits have really just gone towards functional drinks. And maybe I'll have a glass of wine out with friends occasionally. Like maybe I'll go out and have a couple drinks and like listen to music sometimes, but it's a rare occurrence versus a nightly occurrence.
Yeah, I hear you. I'm largely in agreement with that. I've never experienced the anxiety thing you mentioned, but I also do not drink. I don't drink any alcohol for myself. But I thought what you were going to say before you elaborated on anxiety, I thought you were just kind of prematurely experiencing what so many people experience, which is that they just can't handle it as they get older. Like small amounts of alcohol feel like a hangover, but that anxiety piece is kind of unique, you know?
No, the anxiety, what's funny, my partner experienced the same thing. It started for him a couple years after me, but we both get it. So it's like, why would we like sit there and both just be like super scared and like sad? Yeah. I think it's related to the GABA and like how that all functions, but it is an effect that some people experience. But yes, and then you get even older and like you can feel a glass of wine the next day. You're just not as productive. You're a little bit foggy. You don't really want to work out. Your food choices change. And so, yeah, for me, it's the low, no alcohol lifestyle is better. But some people, it doesn't change. It's all like bio-individual. So I don't typically comment on other people's alcohol consumption, but definitely am slowing on my own.
Yeah, I hear you. Cool. All right. So let's talk a little bit about your DNA testing option. I think that's really interesting. And I think this is something people don't know enough about. Hey, everyone. It's me, Tanya, your host here at the Mother Wit podcast. You know, I sometimes invite my clients on the show to talk about their birth stories and postpartum experiences, but I want to tell you a little bit more about what those clients and I actually do together. I started Mother Wit to help people in the perinatal period achieve their health and wellness goals. That means whether you're hoping to conceive and struggling with high blood pressure or high blood sugar, or you're having trouble managing anxiety or depression in the postpartum period, or maybe you just need support and advocacy between prenatal or postpartum visits, I can help. Get a discount on your first consultation with me at motherwitmaternity.com using the code FIRSTCONSULT 10% off. That's 10% symbol, all one word. I'm looking forward to working with you and maybe having you on the show too.
Yeah, so our DNA really is supportive of that smart multivitamin that we have, where we look at your genetics to see how your body processes, utilizes, needs nutrients, because different genetic profiles have different propensities for needing more support, either in heart health or in metabolic health, or maybe their body doesn't process nutrients the same way. Like there's certain genetic variations where if you're taking coenzyme Q10, so CoQ10, which is in a lot of beauty products, but also in a lot of supplements, where your body can't actually convert it to the active form, so you're just wasting it, or other genetic variants where if you're taking iron, it's actually harming you instead of hurting you, and iron's in a lot of multivitamins. And so it's really helping you understand from a genetic perspective what your needs are, and then we couple that with blood testing, so what are your levels now, and then also the hormone testing from a cortisol perspective, so if your cortisol is out of balance. And then we use our algorithms that we developed over time to figure out, based on all of it, what you really need today and where you should be aiming to go in the future.
And so I also know that you use this microbead technology instead of it being like a solid tablet or capsule or even a liquid. Does that mean that you are very precisely dosing, or is it just a matter of what you include versus what you don't include?
It's precisely dosed per individual, so it's truly custom, bespoke, created for you.
And I mean, how precise are you able to get? Like, how do you make sense out of that?
It's down to the microgram or milligram, depending on the nutrient.
Wow.
So over 700 trillion different combinations.
And you have presumably followed people over time who are taking these precision vitamins to see that they are tracking. How are you managing kind of the idea of just individual absorption? So it's one thing to create that precision, but it's another thing to like watch each individual's human body deal with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. The way that we look at that is from a kind of nutrient level perspective. Mm-hmm. So we understand where you are from a baseline, we dose you accordingly, and then there's follow-up testing you can do so that we can adjust the dosage based on your absorption rates and what's actually going on from a levels perspective in your body.
So what kind of frequency are people retesting at?
We recommend every 3 months if your levels are really off, but most people are retesting every 6 months or a year.
So basically you're getting somebody situated, and once they're situated, they feel comfortable that they're off and running, and then they're just, they can feel the difference in their body, hopefully, and they just carry on.
Exactly.
Cool. And are you doing vitamins that are specific to life phase? Meaning like if somebody they do not want children, they don't need that extra folic acid, let's say, versus a prenatal versus something that maybe is for an aging person.
We do dose it based on age, but we're not typically working with people in their pregnancy years.
Okay.
Granted, I did during both my kids take it because it's more customized and I can get the mix of nutrients that I really want.
Got it. So you're talking to those postpartum mamas. Got it. Awesome. Perfect. So how can our listeners learn more about you?
Yeah, you can find out more about me on my Instagram, which is at Rachel SOP Sanders. And then you can find out through the link in my bio, my website, and how to subscribe to my newsletter, which is all free. And then you can find out more about Rootine, which is rootine.co. That's our website. And we're also available on Amazon, and we're on all social at routine_co.
Awesome. I'll make sure to include all of that in our show notes. Thank you so much for the conversation today. I'm really happy to learn about your business, and best of luck to you.
Thank you so much. It was great to be here.
All right, so that's our show for today. I just wanted to add a couple thoughts. We touched on a couple of things that we've never really expanded on this show, and I'm clearly back on a little bit of a fitness kick because I haven't been talking about that subject for so long, and I'm really enjoying doing that. So if anyone is really interested in hearing more about heart rate variability and recovery and how you consider recovery and the choices you make when it comes to exercise, I would love to expand on that. And I'll be thinking about who the right guest is, because while I'm learning a lot in those areas, I would not consider myself expert. So I'm happy to talk about them a bit, but I'd love to bring on the right person. So I included in the show notes some more details about all of the things that we kind of touched on. So definitely check out the show notes. I'm trying to make those very useful for you guys without it being overwhelming. And if anyone is kind of expert on anything I included there and you want to come on the show, reach out. Thank you for listening to the Mother Wit podcast. If any of the issues we discussed today resonate with you or your experience, I'd love to hear from you. Leave me a voicemail at 917-310-0573, or better yet, email me a voice memo at tanya@motherwitmaternity.com. I really want to hear what worked for you, what didn't work, what support you'd wished you had, how you got through the tough times, how you advocated for yourself, or especially any tips you want to share with our listeners. I want to hear all of it. And if you'd really like to work together, you can get a discount on your first consultation with me at motherwitmaternity.com using the code FIRSTCONSULT, 10% off. That's 10% symbol, all one word. Okay, that's all. It's wonderful being in community with you all. Thanks again for listening, and see you next time.
And remember, listeners, nothing we discuss on this show should ever be considered medical advice. Please speak to your local provider about anything that comes up in this show that resonates with you and your needs and your health care.